You booked it, episode 152. What's going on, everyone? Thank you for joining me today on You Booked It, the number one podcast where you learn how to create a successful entertainment career. Every episode is a masterclass on how to move your career forward. And if you want even more, head over to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the email community where we dig deep into what you can be doing right now to help book that next gig. And now, let's do this. Okay, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Kristina Morales. Kristina, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Kristina is a singer, songwriter, and creator from New Orleans, Louisiana. She has 10 plus years of experience working in the entertainment industry as a professional vocalist, band leader, producer, and voice teacher. Her band, Kristina Morales and The Inner Wild, explores new soundscapes that bridge the gap between radio music and alternative, improvised soul. Her heart-centered work and voice studio is inspired by yoga, self-inquiry, and exploring wild passion. Her debut album, Transit, released through Bubble Bath Records on October 2nd, 2020, and is available on all streaming platforms. Kristina, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Fill in the gaps and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
All right. Yeah, like you said, I was born and raised in New Orleans. That's a pretty big part of who I am as an artist because we have a pretty strong musical culture. We like to say we are the inventors of jazz. So that has always been a major part of my identity. I spent 10 years performing there professionally, like all over nightclubs, restaurants, hotels, private events, festivals, pretty much anything, like whatever gig I could get, I did it. And it was an amazing learning experience. I got to work practically I worked every single week probably for 10 years as a performer, and as a result didn't need to really have a survival job, quote unquote. Had one for maybe like a couple of years just as like a backup, just to be probably get some like practical work experience under my belt just in case. But it was really just that's what it was just in case, and I was able to perform pretty regularly. And so one of my great residencies was 9-year residency at one of the most famous clubs in the city called the Spotted Cat. They're on CNN every year for the New Year's Eve. So
Very
they like to
cool.
go there. Yeah. And that was an amazing experience. I grew so much on that gig because it was the first gig I actually landed and it was the last one I left too. And I was a child when I started, just fresh out of Boco. And it enabled me to really jump in to all of that amazing knowledge they gave us and actually apply it immediately on a week to week basis. And I could see where I was messing up and I could perfect things. And so one of my big projects ended up being The Inner Wild, which was we were doing a lot of improvised music. It started in jazz, but then it ended up in soul. And then at the end of it, I was just like, why don't we just do everything we love? Which for me was like 90s R&B and pop and personal songs. And we just developed this amazing rapport with each other because we're playing with each other every week and we could just improvise and have these conversations on stage. So that's like my crown jewel is my band because that I got to really grow as a performer. But after that, I decided that family goals were more important to me. So I moved to Orlando where most of my family is. And I took up a job performing at Disney Springs. And then the pandemic hit, and now I've moved to Atlanta. So that's a little bit of my journey.
Yeah, very cool. And let's dig into this first section here. And Kristina, look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, I love this. I'm a sucker for a good quote too. My favorite quote, and I say it to myself all the time, is the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. It's by Joseph Campbell.
It's really good. And can you delve into how that is applied to your career?
For sure. So every time that I had been afraid to like put myself out there or was too afraid to like make a move forward in my career or to do an audition or to even like sometimes just be on stage and all of a sudden you just get random stage fright. Just pretty much any time there was anything that was I was experiencing a block within myself, that fear blockage. I remind myself that everything that I'm afraid, like everything that I'm afraid of, it could be holding me back from the life that I want. What if everything that you ever wanted was just on the other side of that darkness that you can't see? And you're scared of it, right? Because you can't control it, because you don't know, you can't predict if you can't see past the darkness, but it's preventing you from moving forward. It's preventing you from challenging yourself. It's preventing you from maybe the life of your dreams. So just try to soak up as much like fire you can muster within yourself and like light up that darkness with your own passion and get through it. And because like your mind is here for your survival, your mind's, but it's not for your thriving. It's not to keep you thriving. So you have to remind yourself sometimes that, okay, my mind's trying to protect me, but let me follow my heart and let me get past this fear and get bigger than I could possibly imagine. And maybe maybe my dream life is on the other side of it. My goals, that gig or whatever it is.
For sure, your mind is for your survival, not for your thriving. I think that's so pertinent and so true. You just have to push through. Very good.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
for sure.
And let's get into this next section here. And Kristina, of course, you're an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think that you'd agree that this industry can be one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that in order to create and have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while yeah, there's an outrageous amount of fun and excitement doing what we do, there are also our fair share of challenges and obstacles and failures we are going to experience and we're going to have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
Yeah, piggybacking on the last quote, I guess, was fear. Fear was a big challenge for me. And as a result of my fear, I didn't move out to New York or LA. I actually just moved back home to New Orleans after our graduation at the Boston Conservatory. And there was a lot of regret in that. And I couldn't see the blessing for what it was, that I was performing every week. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. So I had to really look at myself and look at my story. I had to look at what I was telling myself about why I'm a failure, and re-examine that there's a kind of a myth that you tell yourself about how you're going to make it. And that if you follow this formula, if you go to one of the best schools and then you get that agent and you get those auditions, and if the only the right person sees you, like within a matter of time, within 100 failures, you're going to get that one yes. That was the story I told myself, and because of that story, I was limited, and I couldn't even see the blessings I was getting. And I couldn't see that I was making it. I was successful. I was surviving off of my voice and my art form, and I didn't have to have a day job. And it was really, it's just, I think it's the story and the fear that that you absorb, that at least for me was my biggest challenge, and having to allow myself to be like, okay, let's eliminate the story and appreciate the flow of what I'm actually getting so I can keep expanding and living in that flow, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, we can for sure be our worst critics. We can be the ones that hinder our ability to obtain whatever it is that we want so easily because it's our mind that just plays tricks on us and lies to us, and we believe it instead of trying to exist in the moment, exist in the present, and having taken that time to appreciate what life actually has given us at the moment. And like you said, you were already performing, you were living as a professional artist, as a performer, which is huge. But if you're going to limit yourself with your
Yeah.
mind, it's hard to get out of that. But I'm glad that through the years you've realized that and you've been able to get hindsight on that and be like, you know what? We don't need that part of our careers. If you could have cut that out, how much better would the experiences have been in that day to day and all those gigs in Louisiana have been?
For sure. And I think you just, as a performer, you see, maybe if it's social media or whatever it is, but like you just see everyone else doing their thing. You think, oh, maybe I have to fit into that role, or
Mm.
that's how my story is supposed to play out. But everyone has a different story. So whoever's listening, don't let anyone else's story affect your story. Just go live your story.
Yeah, for sure. And This is what I really love about the entertainment industry is that it's so big, broad, and diverse, right? It's not like,
Yeah, bigger than people think.
yeah, it's not like you're going to go be a pediatrician and then obviously you know what your track is going to be for pediatrician for the most part, right? It's a lot
Yeah,
more black
yeah.
and white than ours. There's so much to do in this entertainment
Mm-hmm.
industry. You create your own story, as you said. So good.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living, or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
So that's really interesting. I never had that moment. And I think for me, because I like was born and then it's like I started singing or something. And it couldn't get me to shut up. And it just wasn't like, there was never like a moment. Like I was like literally born to sing. And I think it goes back again, like the story you tell yourself. Like I told myself I'm a singer. Like I was just like, there was no other option. Like throughout school, I didn't even attempt to try to like really, I mean, I was a good student, but just for the sake of being a good student, but I wasn't like, I'm going to use this mathematical equation one day, or I'm going to really pay attention to this. Like I had no, like my mind the whole time was like, I'm going to be a singer. And I actually didn't even think I was going to go to college. I was like, I'm going to move out to do like to LA or New York, or the whole story that I told myself. And there was not even a plan. And then through people telling you like go to college or do the plan, that's more when I went on that route. But I think it was more that I had a moment later actually in life, like when I turned 30, that I was like, should I be a singer? Like it was more of a quarter life crisis like moment of being like, did I not even consider other options when I should have? It was a kind of a reverse moment, but I ended up going, I think that's really what this pandemic has showed me, but I think I ended up going back to realizing, okay, your first instinct was right, which it usually is, but maybe there's other things you can explore, other interests that you can like really gather information on, so you can go back and further define your purpose. So not really just like your moment of what you're going to do, but why are you doing it? So for me, it was more about like that purpose moment of being like, okay, you learn to sing, you learn to perform, you learn to tell stories, but what's the theme that you keep coming back to when you're on these stages? For me, the theme was always that people were coming to my shows and being like, the power of your voice mixed with the power of your vulnerability and your emotional, the way you express yourself, like it's opened me up when I was feeling numb, or people would come up to me and be like, I was crying with you, and it really gave me a like cathartic experience. And so I started realizing this is my purpose, and these are just the different mediums that I've learned develop my purpose more, which I think has been to like open people and have them follow their hearts ultimately.
Oh, I really
Hopefully through
like that
sound.
journey. Yeah, so good, so good. And let's piggyback on that real quick and talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the audition and callbacks, if they happen to be a part of it. But what was going on in your life, and what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
Yeah, so I had been singing for a while, and I was going from the jazz world to more the soul world, and I was trying to show other bands that I could be a valuable asset to them. And one day from soul brass band in New Orleans, and they're like, do you want to be on the ticket with us at this festival in the Treme? And you'll just come on as like the featured vocalist. And I was like, yes, 100%. That was like my dream.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to perform at a festival, but I also really wanted to perform with a major brass band because they have so much energy and my voice is very brassy. So I got that. And we performed at that festival, and it was just the most amazing experience because it was like a big giant stage on a big giant field with all these people just dancing and cheering for you and singing along with you. And I got to hear my voice like magnified. And I already have a big voice, but because it was even bigger, I like felt like I could dig in even more, because I always feel like I'm always trying to make my voice a little smaller for the spaces. But I was like, this time I like unleashed, and I roared out there, and it was just the most amazing experience. There was so much energy back and forth from the audience and the band, and yeah, so magical moment.
Oh, very cool. I have never experienced performing at a festival. I've performed in some very large crowds, but nothing at a music festival. I can only imagine how exciting that would be.
Yeah, it is. Because I know the experience of performing in like a theater, and it's very like formal, and there's moments when you should clap, and but it's when it's a festival, it's a lot more informal, formal, and people are very wild, and it's fun.
Yeah, so cool. And let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And it's a crazy time, right? We're amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
What I'm working on right now is I'm gonna continue producing music videos for the Transit EP that I just released because I really like the aspect of telling visual stories along with the music because I was a musical theater major. And after that, I think I'm gonna start recording singles and videos for trying to develop the concept a little differently. And I'm thinking of playing around with like more spiritual music because I really love like spirituality and self-betterment and preaching. And I feel like sometimes when you're a singer, you're a little bit of a preacher and a storyteller too. So those are some projects maybe for the next 5 to 10 years I see myself doing. And then on a different, what I'm looking forward to is I'm hopefully going to develop my own festival, like a music festival retreat. I want to incorporate all my passions of like music and art and spirituality and like astrology and yoga and self-betterment and theater. And I want to make it this amazing, like maybe a 5 day experience for people. So that's maybe in the 5 to 10 year plan too. I'd love to do that. And then as far as I see the industry, how I see it shifting, I feel like we're going into a place of more like acceptance. I feel like when you and I graduated, Dane, we were on the precipice of it, but it was
Mm,
still on the other side. And what I mean by that is because I'm Puerto Rican, but I look very light skinned, and and at the time I was then dyeing my hair blonde. And I remember being told by a lot of the agents, you're going to either have to go tan or dye your hair darker if you're going to keep your name, Cristina Morales, or you're going to have to like change your name. And it was just like a weird, bizarre thing because as a Puerto Rican, you just identify with it being Puerto Rican. Like you just grow up hearing you're Puerto Rican like 10,000 times a day. So it was really bizarre to be told by people who didn't even know me that I had to change my identity a little bit to fit in to what they thought was acceptable. But I think we're going into a place now where there's more there's more representation on all the colors of what it is to be a person in this country, and as a result, what all those stories would entail as well. And I think because we're going to this place of reclaiming our identity, we're as artists, we're also like reclaiming our talent, and we're reclaiming like the art form a little bit. And I
mm.
say that because of social media, because we don't need to like rely on a television show or a record label to find us so that we can produce work. Now we have the ability to produce it ourselves and through social media and digital marketing be able to tell that story and get it to the right audience. So there's a little bit of a, like a reclaiming of the space I think going on with artists, and I think because of it there's more acceptance of different stories, and I think that's really exciting. So I'm trying to be optimistic about it. I know there's all sorts of other stuff, but that we're reclaiming the art form a bit. And so I think we're going to see some really interesting things because of the internet.
Yeah, I really like your insight. And you're right, it really does feel like a reclaiming. And I like how you brought up the digital marketing aspect, the social media platforms, the ability for us to create our own content, not having to wait around for big production houses to pick us up or to discover us and then invest millions of dollars into us. We can create our own art and get it delivered to the very specific audience that we know or we think that we know it would be the perfect fit for. And it's so amazing. It's such an amazing time right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that honestly, like sometimes having that budget actually limits creatives because creatives like do well under the pressure of having a small budget. That's when you get creative. At least
Mm,
that's one of the things I took away because from directing the directing course at Boca, we had such a small budget to put on these shows. And it was like I got more creative because I was like, okay, what can we do with nothing? You know?
yeah, exactly.
And then so you're forced to expand.
Yeah. And if you're going to spend loads of money, that's the thing. If you're going to spend, say you've got $1 million budget, depending on what medium you're using, that's a lot of money or not very much money at all to advertise. But
Hmm.
when you're spending that volume of money, it also, decisions tend to move a little bit slower, right? Because you want to
Yeah.
make a decision on something and you have to see how it's going to play out. And you have to spend money to see if it's
Mm.
working or not before you can make a switch. Digital ads and Facebook ads and things like that, of course, make switching creatives and copy and things like that much easier, and you can get your analytics very quickly. But still, when you're forced to be creative, that's when you can really adjust and move around really quickly and figure out what adjustments need to be made to get whatever it is that you've created out into the world, because ultimately that has to be part of your strategy, right? If you're a singer like yourself, to you have to get your listenership, right? If I'm a podcast, I have to get my
Mm-hmm.
listenership, right? You need to attract the people that would benefit most from what it is that you're putting out into the world.
For sure. Yeah. With Spotify, it's a kind of a double-edged sword. So Spotify came in and made music pretty much free, which made it very difficult for recording artists to make
Mm,
money, right? Because
yeah.
before the way they made money was through record sales and CD sales and even iTunes like download sales. But once Spotify came in, that kind of turned the whole industry upside down. And so now everything's about streaming. And so, yeah, there's an argument to be made that Spotify is not the greatest thing, but at the same time, it opened up because as an artist now you can get on a playlist and you could be someone in a very small time, but you somehow that has 5 million followers on that playlist. And now overnight, you've just gotten a check in the mail for $20,000 for that quarter because you got played so many times on that playlist. So the internet is, if you can use it to your advantage, as an artist, go for it. There's a lot to be said. You're losing out on some things and you're gaining in others, but I always try to stay with the positive and use what I can, use what's available.
For sure. Absolutely a double-edged sword. And I like that. You said you have to stay with the positive, and I think you also, along with that, you have to stay with the progress. Because once Spotify became a thing, it's not like we're going backwards.
Right.
That's not a thing. Uber's not going away because the taxi companies are upset. So it's progress. So even if there are
Exactly.
downsides to it, learn how to adapt and make the most of that situation.
For sure.
Brilliant. And let's move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round. I am going to ask you a handful of questions.
Whee!
I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Absolutely nothing. I didn't even consider anything else. I was just born an artist.
There it is.
So there was no other option for me.
Second question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received was to trust myself. Specifically, in that context, he was telling me to trust my ears and trust my own musicality. And once I did, I became like a whole different singer practically overnight. But I was always like a little meek and I was like afraid of my big voice. And I just felt it wasn't like seductive or cool enough for jazz or something. And once that person who was like really esteemed was just like, girl, just trust yourself more. I like overnight became a different singer. So trust yourself, like your path, the voice in your head, follow that instinct.
Brilliant. And the third question. What is something that is working for you right now? Or if you'd like to go pre-COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
Yeah, I love this question. So I think the pandemic has actually been really amazing for my creativity because before the pandemic, I was getting really tired. And I don't know about you, but if I feel like everyone else is moving 100 miles per hour, I feel like guilty if I stop even for a second.
Mm,
So I felt really good to be able to like, oh, everyone stopped. And I was able to just dig into like my own creativity again and like finally listen to new music and like, reaffirm that I even want to do this anymore. And like just opened up my whole life because I just started taking in new content, new music, new movies, reading new books, and just getting re-inspired. So yay, pandemic.
yeah, see, there's a silver lining.
Hmm.
And the fourth question. What is your best resource? Whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe a podcast or piece of technology you found is helping your career right now.
So I'm like huge into like social media gurus, and one of my favorites is Marie Forleo. She is an invaluable source for like people who are multi-passionate and want to create like a life of their own. And especially as artists, we're all like, we're pretty much freelancers. So she speaks like directly to us. So definitely check her out. She's on YouTube. She has an amazing book. Everything's figure outable. Incredible energy, just amazing person.
Brilliant. And the fifth question. If you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
So I am torn with this one because I've learned to fall in love with my journey, but I think as a human, we have regrets sometimes. So I think if I was in a universe that I could do it all differently, I think I would have allowed myself more space for failure. And then because of that space, in turn, I would have taken more risks. I went like the traditional route. I went to college, and because education was important to my family, and I went to a high school conservatory. And so continuing that education was important to them. And so I was listening to a lot of other people's advice. And that kind of goes back on like the best advice I ever got, right? Was just to start trusting myself. But I was listening to everyone else's advice about what I should do with my life or the steps I should take. And honestly, it never felt right. I just always felt like I was doing something that was slightly off and I could never really figure it out. And I wish I would have just learned to trust myself earlier, because I think I would have made different steps on how I would have educated myself as an artist. And I think I would have started just creating content and music like the bat, because I think honestly, at least for me, experience is the best teacher, not sitting in a space where I am supposed to be able to fail, right, as an artist, but you're also a student, so you literally can't fail. So I think that's at least the problem for me with school, is that there's a weird part about it that like you can't fail the class, but you need to take risks and you need to do things that maybe don't feel right, or that are maybe not in the teacher's vision for you, but for your own self, you have to take those risks. I think at the end of the day, yeah, like people who are the most successful, they listen to their own like divine source or their own inner monologue, and they cut out all the noise and opinions of others.
Yeah, that is a bit of a conundrum with school, isn't it, when you say it that way?
Mhm.
Especially in the
Yeah,
arts. I
it's
mean,
different.
sure, if you're doing a
Right.
math class, there you go.
It's
It is what it is.
straightforward. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but with the arts, wow. I've never really thought about it that way. Thank you for bringing that up, making me think.
Yeah. No problem.
And the last question. What is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in this industry you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Okay. So I think no hungry, ambitious artist wants to hear this, but sometimes you get what you want and you realize it's not what you thought it was going to be on your silver pedestal of what you thought it was going to be. And it's okay to adjust your story. Okay to adjust the vision. I know for me, I wanted to be like Madonna famous, like Beyonce famous, Kate Winslet famous. Like I just wanted the budget and like the money to be able to like do these amazing like shows. It wasn't even really
Hmm.
about the fame. I just like wanted the opportunity to like do something grand. And then when I started learning about what the lifestyle is, like, oh, you're going to be on tour all the time, or you're going to be waking up like doing this, you're never going to see your family, or you're never going to be home with your dogs. I realized like, oh, wait, that's not me. I don't even operate like that. When I try to, I give myself panic attacks. Like I operate at a different level. And so I gave myself a lot of heartache because I just couldn't accept that like I had gone all these years like with that vision. And that when I got to it, I realized, but that's not who I ended up being as an adult. Like that's not the stuff I ended up really liking. Like I want to wake up and do yoga and be out in nature. I don't want to be in a tour bus eating junk food, like eels at every stop. So I think allow yourself to realize that the silver pedestal gig is not actually always going to be your most memorable experience. Honestly, like my hole in the wall gigs that I would do with my band, that we had a nice packed house, but it was not like the most prestigious gig. Those were my most memorable moments, not like the ones that we built up and we're like, okay, guys, make sure everyone's dressed up and we're at the fancy place. Like those gigs were always a lot more limited and restricted, and there was more rules that like didn't really apply to our vision. So allow yourself like the space to just like have a story that you're telling yourself, that and adjust it when you need to. Don't get stuck in stone. Be kind to yourself, basically. Follow your heart. All of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is such incredible advice. And to expand on that a bit, one of the things that I like to say or give advice to aspiring entertainers is to ask yourself the question, what do you want out of your entertainment career? And to be really honest with yourself, because it's easy to get caught up in, especially now with the social media idea, or if you go to a school in what that training program might really focus on, it's easy to get conditioned to want something. But what is it you
For
really
sure.
want? When you really go back and you get really honest with yourself, what is it that you want out of your career? Maybe it is being on that tour bus. Maybe it is going to New
Yeah.
York and being Broadway. Maybe it's LA. Maybe it's getting up and doing yoga and walking,
Yeah.
being in nature. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter because it's what is good for you. But to try to find that clarity for yourself and then go in
Yeah.
that direction.
For sure. Yeah, and just look into like how a life is like that before. If there's anyone out there that's listening, that's should I do this? Like really look, and there's so many possibilities in the music industry or in the entertainment industry, but also there are certain things that you might have to do eventually, and you have to you have to look at that lifestyle and be like, do I want the lifestyle, not just the dream? Do I want the day to day in and out, what it looks like minute by minute without its makeup on? And I think that's something that you don't really know when you're a teenager about to go into college, making your biggest life decision. You don't know what
You're
you want
right.
your life yet to look like. Once you figure it out, allow yourself to adjust.
Yeah, allow yourself to adjust. I think that's it right there. And to
hmm
and to adjust freely and to not feel bad about it. Adjust and be like, this is
Yeah,
what
with
I need to do
compassion
for
to
me.
yourself.
Yep, exactly. And to wrap up this interview, Kristina, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
Yeah, for sure. So, once again, my name is Kristina Morales. My band is Kristina Morales and the Inner Wild. Just released an EP called Transit. It's available on all the streaming platforms. Thanks so much for listening to it. And if you love it, please share it with somebody else. And you can find me on Instagram. That's usually where I put all of my like creative ideas. But I'm also on YouTube. That's where my music videos at and some of my live performances. And I'm on Facebook a little bit, but not as active there. And I'm sure Dane will connect all those little dots for you. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. And thanks for having me, Dane.
You bet. And for everyone listening out there, she's right. I will connect all the little bits because all the different ways to connect with her are in the description of this episode, including linking out so you can listen to her album. And also be sure to share this podcast with your fellow entertainers, coaches, art and entertainment educators, and anyone you know who is aspiring to create a career in this industry. You Booked It is the #1 resource of expertise on how to actually create a successful career in this industry. Remember real quick about all the great gems that Kristina just gave in this episode. It's amazing, such great insight for your career and the whole length of it as well. And as of today, there are also 152 other episodes that you can go check out with other fantastic guests that have their own unique experience through this industry that you can learn from them with. So please share this, subscribe if you enjoyed this episode so you can catch tomorrow's guest. Kristina, thank you so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure to catch up and to have you on the show.
Yeah, for sure, Dane. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't miss an episode. I have a new guest 7 days a week. Every guest drops more value and insight than any other resource out there. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a rating and review. Also, be sure to head over to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.